Hi, everybody. We're going to be starting to go on our immigration topic. This is like flipped learning. We're going to be discussing this in class a little bit Wednesday and Thursday. So please make sure you watch this at your early convenience. All right. So, I think we all trying to take topics that we're talking about in class and compare it to like our everyday lives. I mean, I think at some point, if you have not yet done so, all of us at one point or another are going to move, whether it's maybe going to another school. Maybe you guys have experienced this in your lives where you went to a different school system and then you transferred into Midview. Or maybe if you guys are choosing to go to college, you could be going to a brand new setting where you don't really know anybody. And think about like the nerves. I know for me, when I first started teaching here at Midview, I didn't know a soul out here. I didn't know a teacher. I didn't know any students. I didn't know any families. And it was, for me, that was like my worst nightmare. I know I felt nervous, I felt scared, and all the natural feelings when you go into a situation, where you don't know what's going to happen. Well, try to imagine that it's how I felt. Those things are all, I have always lived in the Cleveland area, and I was still nervous. But could you imagine picking up all your things and going all the way across the world to a foreign place, leaving your family, leaving your friends? And how that anxiety level might be even more amped up, especially if you can't speak the same language as the natives of where you're going to, and how the anxiety level might be a little bit higher. Or maybe you go to a new job, and again, I think we all can find a place where we've all might kind of put ourselves in the shoes of an immigrant and how difficult that would be. Um, so think about why. Why would somebody move? Okay, so think about like in your case, maybe you changed districts, maybe because your family moved, maybe your parents got a new job, maybe your parents wanted to live closer to family, um, maybe they wanted a better school system for you. Um, Whatever the case might be. Um, Very similar reasons or things, but why people back then wanted to move to America. Now, as we'll get into here in a minute, there's going to be some other reasons as well that we're going to talk about. All right, so guys, in your guys' guided notes that I passed out to you guys in class, there are some things. I'll get the things so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Oh, I don't have it. So never mind. But in your guys' guided notes, you're going to be copying these into your chart. So there are push factors. So things are pushing you out of your homeland. So push factors. Why would somebody leave their native country? So for one instance, the Irish. Over 1 million people died during the Irish potato famine in the 1800s. So that's one example about how and why an ethnic group would leave their native country and come to America. Second thing is political revolutions and wars that were happening in the 1800s. You had communism starting to creep up in the 18 and 1900s, especially in Russia. They placed heavy restrictions on people in Poland and Asia. So those people who were being restricted wanted to provide themselves and their families more opportunities. World War I also happened in the 1900s. Again, people wanted to get themselves out of trouble and out of harm's way and move somewhere where it was safer for their kids and for their families. You had the Mexican Revolution that was happening, where things were very unstable politically in these areas. So again, want it what's best for your children, want what's best for yourself to be safe. Religious persecution. Jews and Catholics across the world were not given jobs. They couldn't. They didn't have the ability to worship freely in those areas. You had cases in Russia where they would go into Jewish businesses and close down Jewish businesses because they didn't like Jews or they didn't like Catholics. So these types of programs and these types of things were happening all over Europe and all across the world during this time. So if you were a Jew or if you were a Catholic in these areas where you were being persecuted because of what you believe and what you worship, on how that might you might be more apt to leave. The Armenian genocide. Armenians, an ethnic group, were killed during World War One. This is only one of the first genocides of the 20th century. 2 million Armenians were killed. Economic struggles. It could be that reason. In Italy, for instance, they had like a caste system where basically you were what class you were born into is where you stayed. If you were born poor, if you were a farmer, then if that's what your dad and grandpa was, that's what you were going to be. So there was a lack of opportunity to move up the rankings. You had overcrowding that was happening in industrialized countries in Europe where they had nowhere else to go. Lack of housing, lack of water, lack of food. And also, a lot of in Europe, a lot of the land was already developed. They had, again, little opportunity to own land. So those are push factors. Things are pushing them out. Now you have pull factors. What was happening in America? Why were they coming to the United States? What factors pulled them into the United States? Obviously, guys, one of the things that we're founded upon is uh, political freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Again, at least that's the idea. Although things weren't perfect here, as we'll get into, things were often at least better than what they were where they came from. Individual rights, as I said, speeches, again, were also examples. The Homestead Act, you had land out west, the western part of the United States, that a lot of the land was undeveloped. So the Homestead Act basically was giving land away to develop it, to get rid of like the overcrowding on the East Coast in New York and encourage people to move out west to the new frontier. So westward expansion. The gold rush, another reason why people came to America to get rich by getting gold. And then finally is employment. A lot of employment opportunities in the United States. There was a lot of opportunities to farm. There was factory jobs, railroad jobs, industrial jobs. So again, those are the push-pull factors for why America became very kind of looked at as being a place or a destination for immigrants. Now, the other thing that helped too was the propaganda. There were railroad and steamship companies in Europe that was making pamphlets and encouraging people to leave to America, saying that we were the land of the free, the land of opportunity, the land of the rich. So again, they would encourage people to buy tickets on their railroad or on their steamship to come to the United States. Because that's what's kind of good for their business. Although some of that was kind of embellished and lied, because there were a lot of issues in the United States. Not all immigrants got rich and looked like things like this. All right, so there's two different things. There's two different kinds of immigrants. You have old immigrants and you have new immigrants. The old immigrants are people that came or are immigrants that came before 1870. So you see this on the red that's highlighted in the map. These people came from England, Ireland, Germany, North and Western Europe. Now think about that. Think about Great Britain. Okay, white, Protestant, spoke English. So when they came to America, they could kind of blend in. They looked like a lot of the people who already lived in the United States, who had that British English background. Now, other things that kind of set them apart was that they were skilled laborers, meaning that they had a skill. For a blacksmith, a locksmith, somebody who worked with tools, somebody who was educated on a certain craft, things that not everybody can do. So they came to America with the plan on staying in America, not to go back. They wanted to make America their home. They did have some education. They did speak some English. And a lot of them were Protestant. Now, although they came to America, a lot of them moved to the Midwest, like Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, and they farmed for the most part. So again, old immigrants, for the most part, they blended into the United States. They looked, they talked, they wanted to make America their home. So they blended in, for the most part, pretty seamlessly to American culture. Now this is where things kind of change. Little change. Is the new immigrants. These are the groups that's going to be completely different from the old. So the new immigrants are going to come to the United States after 1870 to 1920. Now this group is going to come from mostly Southern and Eastern Europe and Asia. So I see this on the map here. You guys can see the orange up here and the yellow. Now think about like Italy, Austria, Russia, Czechoslovakia, Serbia, China, from those areas of the world. Now, what separated them is that really a few things. Obviously, if you came from Asia, you had a different complexion. You looked different compared to what was already here. So you kind of stood out. Two, language of Asian was different from English language. Religions were different. Now, from Southern and Eastern Europe, think of the Italians. They speak Italian. They don't speak English, they speak Italian. So a lot of these immigrants did not speak English. They didn't blend in. They didn't understand the language. A lot of them were unskilled laborers, meaning that they didn't have the skill, they didn't have the education. A lot of them did like factory work in the factories that didn't take a whole lot of education to do. Really, anybody can do it. Kids can do a lot of the factory work. A lot of them were Catholic and Jews. So again, they were different from the Protestants that were already here. So again, language was different, religion was different. Now here's another thing: is that a lot of them had a plan of not really staying in America. A lot of them wanted to save money and go back home. So they weren't really invested in American life as the old immigrants were. So think about that. If you were to guess, old or new, which group had a harder time fitting into the United States? I hope you said new, because they're going to be different. And again, they didn't blend in. So you see this right here, the new immigrants. You see the blue is people that are from Southern and Eastern Europe. The red is from Northwestern Europe. So look at what happened from 1901 to 1910. A lot less immigrants come from North and West. Same from 1911, 1920. A lot of immigrants are going to come from Southern and Eastern Europe, meaning don't speak English, unskilled, not invested. They want to go back to where they came from. They just want to make money here and go back home. So you got to understand that a lot of the natives that lived in the United States, they saw a bunch of immigrants coming into our country and not really willing to adapt. They looked different, acted different. They wanted to go back home. So think about on how the natives might feel about some of these immigrants. Journey to America, they could barely afford it. A lot of immigrants, these tickets to the United States were fairly expensive. So a lot of them was very difficult for them to afford. They were very expensive. So that's oftentimes why immigrants came. In a lot of times, just the men came because you only buy one ticket, and they would come to America, work, and send for the rest of their family. You can only pack what you can carry. You can't take the whole house with you. You can only pack so much. You had long lines. Boats were packed. You guys see this picture. The boats were very, very crowded. Typically, it was about a 6 to 12-day journey, a week to 2 weeks typically, if you left Europe to come to America on a boat. And then obviously you have the rich versus the poor. The rich, as you'll see tomorrow, and one of the things I'll show you guys, the rich in terms of how they were treated on these ships and how their protocols were very, very different from the poor, as we'll talk about on Thursday. Now, one of the parts of the boat, as you'll see, is something called steerage. I'll show you some pictures here in a minute. This was the bottom of the boat where the poor stayed, and these were awful, awful, awful conditions. They were often there was no sanitation down there. There was no windows. So think about where you peed and where you pooped. It's all down in the basement. So there's no windows to let it circulate. It's gonna smell pretty raunchy. Rats were down there. This was not a good place to be. Disease will spread because everybody's so packed down there. The more people that you get concentrated together, spreads disease. And here's some pictures, kind of showing you guys some pictures of steerage. Again, you see people there, family. So there was no privacy down here either. People were packed into these rooms. People who you didn't know. So you see a picture of that. You see again, not very good in terms of your accommodations. Wooden bunk. That's all you get. Here's a bath. Here's a bed. Here's a bed. And here's the potty right there. So just try to imagine that you're going to sleep, all of a sudden you hear right in your ear. Pretty sweet, right? Now, we'll learn about this on Friday, but there's two different entrances to the United States. One was called Ellis Island. Ellis Island is located in New York. Now, most immigrants who came from Europe came in Ellis Island from New York. This was the port where they checked in, boat came around the Statue of Liberty, and then parked there, and the immigrants got off their boat and checked into Ellis Island Station. Or, if you were mostly an Asian immigrant, came in from Asia, you would check in at Angel Island, which is in San Francisco. Again, New York's on the East Coast, closer to Europe. Asia is closer to San Francisco. So those are the two main points of entry there. All right, so you see some pictures there. All right, so anyway, there's going to be an Ed puzzle on this. Make sure that you're clicking on the Ed puzzles, and this is going to be due on Thursday. Thank you so much.